Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Working Mama podcast. This week on the podcast, I speak with Donna, the founder of Bub to Sleep, and we talk all things sleep transition with childcare and also a few hints and tips just in relation to sleep with babies and even toddlers, because we all know that we could always do with a little bit more sleep. So Donna is the founder of Bub to Sleep, a certified sleep sense consultant and mother of 3 girls. She started her journey into motherhood and she became so passionate about creating healthy sleep foundations for her own family, and she wanted to be able to share this with other families, and that's how her journey on her business went. Her belief is that with good sleep, you can deal with anything. In her downtime, she really enjoys doing Pilates, walking her dog, and spending time at the beach with her beautiful family. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and as always, it'd be great if you could leave a rating or review to help promote this podcast to help more working mums. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Working Mama podcast, a show that provides real-world tips, tricks, and advice to all working mamas on how they can have a career, family, and hopefully one day break the glass ceiling. Welcome, Donna. Welcome to the Working Mama podcast. How's your day going so far?
Fantastic. Thanks, Karina. Very exciting. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Very passionate about working mamas.
Yes. I love the enthusiasm and passion you have. So I really can't wait for our conversation and our chat today. So just to kick it off, how would we best describe yourself?
Oh my goodness. Yes, my elevator pitch. So firstly and foremost, I am a mother to 3 children, 3 girls. So they're 17, 15 and 11. Can't believe they're that old. They were my life work experience with sleep, because that's what I'll explain what I do. I was very anxious about having a newborn baby and sleep. I mean, there's lots of other things to worry about, but I was worried about sleep. And so I had a book back then and I was like, okay, this is what we've got to do. That's great. And it did reduce my anxiety around sleep. So I've been obsessed with sleep my whole life, and I'm a wife as well, still married. And yeah, obsessed with sleep and implemented it with my children for all of their little lives. But I am a pediatric sleep specialist. So my business is Bub to Sleep. I founded it, grew it from nothing, from a passion, studied, always researching and studying. I'm really obsessed with sleep. And 5.5 years later and thousands of people all around the world, I work with families individually, one-on-one, to get them sleeping. You don't have to leave them, but it is a miracle. Sleep is a biological miracle, and babies can all learn to sleep either amazingly or better than they were, So that's me, passionate about sleep and a mum.
Oh, so good, so good. And what's been your career journey? Like, how did you, obviously your girls, you had a bit of anxiety around them sleeping, and you said you've only been doing this for 5.5 years. What's been your journey before that?
Well, my journey, I've had a big life actually. I've traveled, lived around the world. I'm someone who's always been independent and, never stopping, but then became a parent, really wanted to become a mum and became a mum and made the decision to stay at home, and which was a really lovely decision. I stayed at home for 10 years and really lost myself, to be honest, and loved being a mum, but I found it quite challenging at times as they got older into toddlerhood, and completely lost myself and didn't realise it, because your world becomes so small, but they become your everything.
Yeah.
And when my littlest got into full-time school, it was about a year, I was thinking, what can I do to help mums? Because for me, the transition to become a mum, as you probably would have heard the word matrescence, which I think explains it beautifully.
I love that term.
Yeah, me too, is like adolescence or big changes in life. I don't want to say catastrophic, because that sounds awful, but it's such a huge change in a woman's life. There's nothing like it at all, first-time baby. And I didn't really realise that. And so then did all of that, completely lost myself, again, not knowing. And then as she was getting older, decided to have the 3. I thought, how can I help mums? And then my passion was sleep. So I'm like, how do I do that? Because I don't have a medical background. I was a personal assistant before, so I wasn't, excited to go back to work in that. Long story short, the universe aligned, and I was sick one day, and I hadn't even honestly started looking, but in my mind I thought how much I'm obsessed with sleep, and a sponsored ad came of become a sleep specialist. I'm like, what's that? What? And again, long story short, everything aligned. An incredible woman in America Dana Olbermann. She is Sleep Sense. She's been around for 17 years, was coming to Australia to train 10 specialists or start training. So that was the beginning of the journey 5.5 years ago. Invested in that, absolutely obsessed with sleep, can't stop reading and researching about it. But for me, 5.5 years later, from what I thought was just going to be a little bit of a side hobby, is a full-time, incredible, I don't even want to call it a business, but it's my calling.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And there's so much to it. I think as new parents, we go, sleep. Like it's, and as you say, it's about, it's a learned skill and, but it defines those early years of childhood. Does. I think every parent I spoke to, it's like, okay, how are you? And the next question, well, how much sleep have you had? And then on top of that, so those years, those months that you're home, definitely mostly the mum doing it, you're walking around bleary-eyed because of lack of sleep, and then you're frustrated, like, I know how to sleep. Why can't my kid learn how to sleep? And it's such a journey.
It's the biggest thing,
so challenging.
Yeah. The biggest thing. And what I found in the last 5.5 years of being a specialist, and particularly because when I started, it wasn't flooded. It's a very unregulated industry and it wasn't flooded, and I couldn't really find that many. I knew like the top ones and they were great. And in the last 3 years, it's just crazy. And again, I think about myself as a first-time mum, and again, I wasn't clinically diagnosed with anxiety back then because I was highly functioning with anxiety, but I absolutely suffer from anxiety and understand it now, managed, but understand it. But I look at what's happening now with these poor mums I work with one-on-one, and the information is so overwhelming and actually a whole lot of BS, meaning the new way of thinking around sleep is making parents feel guilty because we already feel guilty.
Exactly.
And then you think, sleep training is a negative thing, or, and it's absolutely not. Yes, if you cry it out, I get that. That is not nice. But this is a biological skill that they can master, full stop, right? But what happens is there's this amazing specialist out there, and they're doing a great enough job, I think. But the knowledge that they're sending through is, it's quite normal to wake 5 or 6 times a night. It's quite normal to do that. And yeah, it is, but they don't have to be attended to. Like a healthy bubs who's thriving, which is, majority of our babies, can master the skill sleep. Does that sound right? Skill sleep, yes. So basically, as the ages go on, they can come in and out of sleep cycles and put themselves back to sleep, so not need that association. What's happening with the sort of new knowledge is, that's normal. Just do that. But they don't have to be attended to it all the time if they're not upset, and that's the big thing about sleep. They can master coming in and out of sleep cycles and be able to do it themselves.
And really one of those struggles I know from a working mum perspective is you're about to go back to work and you're just like, oh my goodness, this baby's still waking, as you say, 5 to 6 times a night. And you're going, oh my God, how am I going to do it? And it's almost like you're almost like drunk. Like, when you're like going, like say if you've had a big night,
not drunk,
lack of sleep, not drunk.
Your brain's like that, yeah.
Your brain's a bit times of mush, but then you've got to rock up to work, sometimes put makeup on if you've even got there.
Yeah.
And it's a real challenge. And I remember first time going back to work, and I remember my son had woken up at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, couldn't get him back off to sleep. I think I went to work and I had about 4 or 5 cups of coffee that day. But I was shot. I was exhausted.
Yeah. And that goes on and on. And this is where
it's this perpetual cycle.
Yeah. And that's why I love your page, and I actually reached out because I'm like, this is my passion. I mean, lots of passions in my passion, but working mums, because 99.9% of mums I work with at some stage will have to or are going to work. And the thing is, I think, how the hell do you do that? How do you get in a car and drive? Like, that's like you said, it is the drunk feeling, but what it is your brain is not functioning properly. The cortisol in your brain is going next level to function. Then you're probably not even sleeping well in the times that you're sleeping because you're so tired. And then you've got no energy to invest the time in sleep because you think, I'll just sit there and I'll do whatever. And it doesn't work. But what I say to people is, it will work if you invest the time with a specialist that you connect with, a good specialist that you don't have to leave your baby. You just don't. If a specialist tells you to do the leave and check or leaving, you don't need to do it.
Yep.
They can still learn. But it can take, when families work with me, we see progress within 2 to 3 nights. But when they work with me, it's 2 or 3 weeks. So that's when you think of that, you're not going to get if you're doing it on your own, it's not going to be easy, if that makes sense, but it's a doable thing.
Yeah. And so if we are like that, like how can we manage that transition of going back to work and then also then throwing in childcare as well? And I know I had a lot of anxiety and stress because I remember particularly with my first, it was like, he was about 9 months old. Yep. I've just got him in a good routine. Yes, he's finally sleeping. Well, yes. I don't think he was sleeping through, but
sleeping better.
He was sleeping better, more than probably an hour, waking every night. Every hour. And I was like, oh my goodness. Then you then throw in childcare where it's a noisy room, all the kids are together. I'm thinking, how the heck are they even going to get the kids to sleep?
Absolutely.
And then with my second, actually going to childcare for him was much better because he actually got tired and then decided that was enough for him to sleep. So it was really good, worked out the way. But it was, I know, as what you talked about anxiety earlier, I had huge anxiety about starting childcare as a working mum.
Yep, absolutely. Again, let's get back to that guilt cycle, that we just naturally have. I wish we didn't, but we do, no matter how great a job we are all doing. But childcare is huge, right? And so let's talk about cortisol levels and stress. So this is where people go, I'm just not going to sleep train because it's going to cause stress and cortisol levels. Yeah, it will do to a degree, but our babies' cortisol levels are up and down all day when they scratch themselves, got a poo in their nappy. Daycare is one of the highest cortisol levels of change, but it doesn't damage the brain. It's like they're loved, they're responded to. That's what cortisol levels, that's what they do, it's stress. So when we talk about sleep, right? The biggest thing that I say to everyone, I try and say to everyone, don't worry about it. Doesn't work because I worried about everything. Yeah. But my main tip would be to try and get their sleep sorted before they start. I think that reduces anxiety, right? Again, investing in a good sleep specialist if it's a bit of a struggle because all babies can learn to sleep well, like I said. So try and get their sleep sorted. So what often happens is, sadly, mums have got their back up against the wall. They didn't really want to do sleep training, but the bubs feeds to sleep. And they're like, oh gosh, it just hasn't changed and they've got to go to daycare in a month. Yes, I can help. I'm here for you, but it makes me a bit sad that the poor mums love breastfeeding to sleep and they've got to do that. So what you've got to think about is how can bub go to sleep reasonably independently at home? That would be your main thing because then the stress is not going to be as big for them to be able to be supported a little bit by the carers, but they can do it themselves. That'd be number one. Look at that because if they're breastfed or bottle probably wouldn't be as bad, but breastfed would be, your breasts aren't going to be at daycare.
Yeah.
So trying to do that, working on independent sleep would be my number one. Trying not to worry about it. I know that sounds ridiculous because it is, but it's okay because you would have found a daycare that you love and or like and make sure that you're comfortable with them and that the sleep environment's as good as possible, as dark as possible, not nursery rhymes. Just the typical environmental stuff would be great. And when I say don't worry about it, say for example, you've got someone who's sleeping well at home, great. They start daycare, they're definitely going to be upset about that in general, okay? So then make sure you have lots of one-on-one time before bed because often with working parents, you're rushing, you get them home, you're driving, you try not to fall asleep in the car, and then you dinner, bath, book, bed, right? My biggest thing would be to try and get a little bit organised with dinner and stuff so it's a bit calmer. And then having it 10, 15 minutes of really one-on-one time. No phone, no TV, just absolute connection. Now, even if they're crawling around and they're quite busy, follow them around. Like having that time with them because what ends up happening is they're busy and that's their life and they're not worried about it, but then they go to bed and they have FOMO. And they're like, I want to spend time with you now. So that can be any age. So independent sleep, number one. Try to have calm one-on-one time leading up to bed, 10, 15 minutes. And also just work on their wake time. So, for example, they go to daycare, they have crappy sleep, okay? Don't work on the clock of being asleep by 6:37 because that's their normal sleep time. Say they had whatever amount of sleeps, 1, 2 or 3, 4, whatever their personalised awake time is, work on that. So if that means they normally go to bed at 7 because they have better sleeps at home, but they have crappy ones at daycare, they go to bed at 5:45.
Just bring it earlier. Yeah.
They're my main tips. That's my main tips. And yeah, they would be my main tips basically. And that they do adjust within a week or so. But yeah, trying to roll with the punches really, with the wake times, independent sleep and lots of one-on-one.
And what about that anxiety? I know that I was like, oh my goodness, what happens like, because, at home,
both of my sons were having like the 30 minutes in the morning and then the perfect 2 hours at home at mid lunchtime. You go to childcare and they only do one generally sometimes one sleep cycle each time. And you're like, oh my goodness, like how can this be? And
it is. But also, children, babies, toddlers can differentiate between home and daycare. Not saying it's not going to mess up at times, but what I say is you're having crappy times and it's a 1 or 2 weeks of unsettled. Just keep it on the days that they're at home the same and it will figure itself out. The days that they have the crappy 30-minute cat naps, again, try not to worry about it. Work on the wake times, go to bed early. Because what happens is, again, so much information out there. Oh, if they don't sleep well, it's going to affect their night sleep. Yeah, it can, but it's more just not overtired in those wake times.
Yeah.
So again, try not to worry about it. I know I keep saying that, but because that does cause anxiety, 100%. Like I was anxious about sleep so much as why I'm so passionate about it, and I was the same. I was like, oh my gosh, why are they? But now over time and all the work I've done, it's more just the wake times. And then the days they're home, really concentrating on their good sleeps at home. If they're a little bit unsettled in the first few weeks, work on it at home. So if they had that nice big lunch one, you spend time resettling.
Yeah. One thing I also picked up particularly with my youngest, because he wasn't a great sleeper at childcare, that the way that the educators worked out to get him, they found their own little routine. So they got to know both the kids. So they, just like we do as new mums, we work out what works. The little idiosyncrasies. Yeah. Turns out some of the educators, there were some educators better than others of actually getting him down. They're like, oh, he loves a pat on the back and, open room. He just wanted that extra comfort. So it's interesting as well that they work out what each of the kids were. As you said, they differentiate between home and childcare or wherever they're being cared for. But then those people that are actually those other people, and I guess it's a bit of us trusting other people as well, they all work out their own little routines, what works. Because I remember when with I think it was my first, my mother-in-law would rock him more to sleep. And we're saying, please don't rock him to sleep. We're trying to get out of that routine because we were always guilty of it. She's like, no. And I'm like, I had to just get to the point of like, okay, if it's for her, it was what working. Yeah. But as you said, my son was differentiating between home and his grandparents' house. 100%. So that was okay.
And isn't that a great sentence to use, differentiating between, because this is what happens. We get so stuck in no, which is what I was like. But I have a husband that's go with the flow, Donna, just go with the flow. And the thing is, I wasn't a go with the flow person. But I went, okay. And particularly around sleep, and you go, let's just go for a drive. No, I can tell you not one time was he wrong. Yeah. So I had to so I feel like I'm him now for all the mums, like it's going to be okay. The thing is, what can happen though, say for example, your son was with your mum for 3 nights, right? And he was rocked to sleep every night. You could have a little bit of a fuss on the 4th night back at home, but don't rock him to sleep. So differentiate between where they are staying, absolutely. If they can try and do what you do, brilliant. But if they can't, then always stick to your foundations and boundaries at home with what you do.
And there's some things as well that you can do to help with that transition back into childcare of, blankies. And I've seen like there are some blankies that have got like white noise in them and things like that. Like, is it also about have that familiarity to help 100%. With those transitions?
100%. I have found though, again, I think it's a bit of a SIDS thing, but I haven't heard it a lot that they don't let the teddies go to daycare. So that's a bit upsetting. But yeah, absolutely. So for me, no white noise on teddies because they don't last for more than 45 minutes, not naming names, but all the teddies are fantastic, but you want any white noise to be constant, brown, pink, white noise constant. So usually the daycare has it anyway. But yeah, familiarity, absolutely. You need them to have that it's like their best friend, their teddy.
That really helps. Yeah,
definitely.
And then what about like with self-settling and things like that? So I know that what do you do? Like if your kid's not settling or not in those routines and you need to go back to work, how do you manage it?
Work with me. Well, it is. The biggest thing is, like I said, there's so much information out there. But what I do when I work with, joking but not joking, what I do when I work with families, and if you can think about that we have the 2 or 3 weeks, it takes a long time. We don't leave our baby, right? When we talk about independent sleep, that is actually without a dummy. I'm not anti-dummies at all. If you feel like you're putting that dummy in all times of night, you might need to look at getting rid of it. We're talking about just quickly, science-based stuff, biological sleep cycles. So we're coming in and out of lighter, deeper stages of sleep all night. We go to sleep perfection. They go to sleep on their own. That's independent sleep. They can go in and out of those deeper and lighter cycles and not wake. When there's some kind of association, then they're often waking to have that association to help them back. So dummies, rocking, bottle, feeding of some kind, singing, music. You don't want music. You want white noise, brown noise. So when we're talking about all that, I don't want people to think, oh God, I've got to get rid of everything, because that's just too stressful. But what you've got to think about how they go down. So for example, if they go down rocking, right? And some families I work with that they're rocking them and they're like 3. That's all they know. Habitually, that's all they know. So what you do over time, if you ever start anything new and you look at what's going on with independent sleep, start everything at night time, because we have melatonin that helps. Think it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to take a while, So what you do is you're always with them. So you might say a Bubs has been rocked to sleep. You hold them for a bit until they're calm, put them down, sit with them, hand on chest. So what we're trying to do is offer that comfort and support as a parent as they're mastering this new skill, as all the skills that they master as they get older. Sleep's the same, So dummies are a tough one. Feedings and anything in the mouth, because it activates the vagus nerve, which is that calming nerve through our body. That's sucking on the top. So that is the toughest one. But say you want to get rid of the dummy and you're like, I really want to get rid of it. What I often do when I work with families is we might go from removing dummy to rocking to sleep, and then removing the rocking to sleep. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So really
it's
gradually.
a stage process rather than just like cold turkey.
Yeah. A lot of sleep specialists don't do that, but I'm an empath. I just don't, I get like, babies are still going to cry with any change. And if you find someone that says no cry sleep training or support, I don't know how that would work with a healthy baby who's got lungs, because they don't like change. And that's the thing you've got to think to yourself. Babies don't like any change. We're the captains of the ship. We're the, pilots of the plane. We should be in control. So we want to change this habitual stuff around sleep. How do we do that? With support. And I say intermittent support, meaning, okay, you might rock to drowsy, and that works. You might rock to drowsy 50%. That works. That's my approach, is really gradual. And then it's like I said, walking, eating, crawling, sitting. It's us parenting and supporting them, and then they master the skill and off they go. I also liken it to breastfeeding. Like if you're a first-time mum and you've decided to breastfeed, it doesn't come easy.
No. Both times for me it was hell.
It hurts.
We got there.
Exactly. So that's 2 things. If you look at right there, the most important things for our life is sleep and food. We'll die without them, right? So the Bubs should come out knowing how to feed. Yes, they do, but they don't. So if you think of it just like that, and I don't know anyone who had an easy road, with some obviously much more horrific than others, but it hurts. They don't latch. Like my second one didn't latch, and it was painful forever until I gave up after 9 weeks because it hurt too much. But think of sleep as the same. It's a biological skill. We can absolutely be there for them to master. And the other thing that's coming out a lot is, they can't self-settle before 6 months. Not true. Absolutely not true. You can create some really great sleep foundations from hospital. Now, that would be wake times, cuddles, all that sort of stuff, and gently implement stuff. And then by the time they get older, as we're creating those foundations, they learn.
Yeah.
So that's it.
What I'm really hearing for you is definitely a big foundation is about those awake times. Do you have something that obviously we could link to in the resources about knowing what those awake times are?
Oh my gosh,
I'll get a link off you and I'll put them 100%. In, because I know so many people are like, but my baby's 9 months old, what's the good awake time and things like that. So I'll definitely link to that in the show notes.
Awesome. I've got all of that. Yeah. I do want to say though, again, to demystify it all for people, I have my own sleep charts, as of thousands of others, right? Which is scientifically based biological sleep schools in the past that have researched this. So they are really important, right? Now, they're mine in the range of what has been researched. But believe me, there's 10% on either side, less or more, that you will not find your baby to be in that chart. And don't worry about that. There's nothing wrong. So, for example, I've had a 9-month-old baby. Usually they're on 2 sleeps. Around about 3-hour wake time, could be 2:45, 3:15. We got down to 1 nap. She wouldn't have a nap.
Wow.
And at 9 months. So we had to figure out together. Now that's my 1%er. Now that's where I work with families one-on-one, right? Because this is where no chart, no program that you buy is going to figure that out ever, and it's going to drive that poor parent crazy. And like for another little 9-month-old boy at the moment, he's on the lesser. He's on now again, 9 months, about 3 hours. He's on about 2, working really well. Now, that's taken us a while to figure that out. So I really want people to understand that you can have all of this information at your fingertips, but your beautiful baby, who's such an individual, may not fit in that chart or anything you find, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just going to drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Because the baby's going to be crying,
And it's the stress and anxiety and, going back to work, it's hard enough. Gosh. And then you got this child that's not sleeping, and then you're not, particularly when you first go back to work, you want some of that recovery bit. And I used to love those 2 hours that I love those 2 hours. My son was having a sleep on the days I wasn't working. I was like, this is me time.
Yes. And that's so
I don't know that
isn't it?
Yeah. It's just recharging. Because as we know, young kids need a lot of attention and they go. Yeah. And so oh my God. So it's so important. And then when we know we're going to go back to work, when should we start sort of thinking about some of these transitions? Like, is there a leader? Because obviously there's the childcare transition, which ideally you do a few weeks beforehand and you don't have all day one that first day. But in terms of the sleep, because I know sleep is going to be a big component of that and also will help alleviate some of your stress and anxiety is what we've already spoken about.
100%.
Is it something like, as you're starting to think about returning back into work, also thinking about it from a sleep perspective?
Definitely. And what happens is, of course, people don't want to pay the money. I get it. It's not cheap. It will be the best money that if you find a great consultant that you love and it's good, it's the best money you will ever spend. But I understand that, you're down to one pay and, understand all of that. But what I would say is maybe 6 weeks, a month before, because really what you would like is good sleep, maybe starting within the few weeks before you start daycare. Now, I've had lots of families that didn't know this, and then we started support training and then they started daycare. We can still do it because I work one-on-one with families and support them through that. But really think out your timeline. And if it's just what you've got to think about, they're not all of a sudden going to sleep. They're not. And this is where I think everybody thinks, they'll get to this age, You've got to think of it as everything we do is routine, habitual, and whatever we've helped support and create, that's all they know. So if they're every hour at night and they come into bed in your bed at 2 a.m., that's all they know. They're not all of a sudden going to sleep through. So really, if you're feeling that angst, and the other thing is, like getting back to that guilt thing, you already feel guilty about it. And so I think it would help with that angst that they were sleeping and rested and be able to probably deal with daycare better than a really agitated, tired baby.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, but there's so many different factors to it, and I'm so passionate about supporting women to return to work.
Yeah, I know,
and I know that sleep and that childcare transition is such a big part of it.
Huge.
And so by trying to work through some of these issues and the hurdles that that we know that are there, and it is a bit of a crystal ball, and you don't always know what the answer is going to be, but it certainly can alleviate some of those stresses. And I know, personally, particularly with my second, I was just as stressed of him starting because he wasn't self-settling. And even though I had been trying for months, he's a lot more stubborn than my first. But then go second child and then go to childcare. I think I probably should, his awake times, I was like, he was probably one of those 10%ers didn't need as much. And I was like, okay, fine, away you go. And he worked it out. But it's those little things that you're just like, oh my God,
the little things that add up. And the thing is, why I'm so passionate about this is, again, my own life journey and sleep, but honest, hand on heart, once sleep is sorted, no matter if you stay at home mum or whatever, everything falls into place.
Oh, 100%.
Everything. Their food, their wake times, their personality, you. And I'm like, it's number one. And what I want to always put out there when I have any conversation with people, try not to look at the negatives or it being scary. I offer a one-on-one, like a 15-minute chat to people for free, just food for thought. This is what could happen. It's okay. And you can just hear the mums go, oh, okay. And it's not cried out. No, it's not cried out. Just there's an option. And that's what I want to say to people. There's a light at the end of the tunnel if you're feeling really stressed about it. And also what I say to mums, whatever you're doing and it's working, don't change it. Like if you co-sleep and you're comfortable with that, or they're dummy or feeding to sleep, you do not need to change a thing. ever. It's just when it starts to impact your life or your mental health that you think, okay, I'm going to look at that, you know.
That's so well said. So well said. Is there anything else that you want to add to just before we finish off?
What else? I think we've talked about everything fantastically, and I hope that that's cleared it up with the daycare thing to try and, you know, lessen the stress. And I'm always about sort of minimalising all the information, meaning, you know, wake times, independent sleep, you know, because it doesn't have to be overwhelming and confusing. But the biggest thing is, you know, everyone's doing the best they can. We all, as parents and particularly mums, feel really lonely on our journey at times, no matter if you've got people all around you, but also know we're all feeling it. We've all felt it. We're all feeling it. The mum next to you with the baby crying, you like get in the car and cry yourself, like we're all doing it. And this is why I love connecting with people like yourself, because I think, you know, if one person hears this and goes, oh, okay, maybe it's not so scary, and they're driving to work, and, you know, I've had mums drive in the front of their garage, you know, like put the foot on the accelerator in front of the brake, have car accidents, go through red lights. And like, this is the reality of mums, because, you know, again, back in the day, you know, I could go back to sleep or I could say my jammies all day when I was really fatigued. But like I said, for me, with the families I work with, there's 99.9% of mums are going back. So they're not only going back to intense work or work they don't like because they have to, they still have to parent when they get home. Then they don't sleep. So everyone's amazing, but you can get sleep.
Yes. And
that's my end note.
I think it's a great way to finish it. Everyone can get sleep. It is possible.
It's possible for everyone. It's not a luxury.
No, which is good. Now, Donna, what do you do for self-care and to fill your cup?
Well, I had to write this down because I laughed at myself, because I'm spending a lot of time on myself at the moment trying to just learn what to do. How ridiculous is that? Because for my whole life, even when I was a stay-at-home mum, I was so busy. And I'm like, what the hell was I doing with myself? But I was really hard on myself. So, you know, I wanted perfection, or, you know, we're just so hard on ourselves all the time. So I think it was a guilt thing. So know that I'm 48, right? And I'm only just starting to understand what I need to do. But as simple as my thing is that I want to do for myself is go for a walk around the park with my dog, go to the beach, you know, sit down with my 11-year-old and watch TV with her. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But, you know, having that time, maybe once a month having a massage, gosh, you know, luxury. And not everyone can afford that, but it's really just having that space in your mind to breathe. Meditation, that's been a big thing. Like guided meditation's been huge for me with stressful times. And years ago, you know, specialists or doctors would go, you need to meditate. And my mind was a million miles an hour. But guided meditation's changed my life. So if I'm in a stressful situation with the family, I will just go, I'm just going to have 5 minutes to meditate. They think I'm crazy, but that helps too. So that's all my self-help stuff. It sounds really simple and it doesn't have to be big. You know, sitting on the beach, if you're in a park, hug a tree, sit under a tree.
Yeah.
You know, just having a break.
It's those little things just to take you away, just to recharge.
From the children, yeah.
Just from the children particularly.
And your partner, husband, whatever, you just need that space for you, 5-10 minutes, you know, even just before bed, doing a nice meditation. I found that that's helped a lot.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
And where can we find out more information and connect with you?
Yes, I'm everywhere. So on all platforms, it's Bub to Sleep. So it's BUB, number 2 sleep, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere. Again, websites, www.sleep.com.au. And like I said, I offer a free 15-minute chat for mums. It's a chat. It's not a sales call. It's not salesy. It's just a check-in and to sort of really simplify and food for thought for the age of their baby of what's going on, and then they can make a choice if they need support or not. But I just really I've tried to create a community rather than just you work for me for 2 weeks and you're gone. You know, it's like if you work with me or you get to find me, then it's for life if you like me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Donna. It's been such a good chat, and I'm sure it's going to have an impact on many other people that I know that are in the transition, or even, you know, got kids at childcare going, oh my goodness, Absolutely. How am I going to do this? So I wish I'd had these conversations when I know particularly before I took my first to childcare.
That's what everyone says. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Karina. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Working Mama podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast catcher. Please also feel free to contact me on any of the Working Mama social channels. Remember, Mama is MUMMA, or website www.workingmama.com.au. I would appreciate you to share this podcast with friends and colleagues, especially those that are parents managing the juggle. And I would really appreciate if you had to take the time out to leave a review of the podcast. Thank you, and see you next time. Have a great week.